Hey everyone, in today's episode, I'll discuss the election and the property market. It's a very interesting topic because I get a lot of people asking what's going to happen around the election, what's going to happen with the market, what do people do, what's going to happen post the market, and it's something that I really actually wanted to get into, and I can't wait to do this episode because I've done a little bit of obviously research on it, and secondly as well, not only that too, I do know actually generally what happens in terms of sentiment around the election. So in today's episode, I'm going to discuss a few things. Firstly, the recent history and what generally happens. Secondly, what truly matters. Thirdly, the effect of each party, and maybe this might ruffle some feathers, but I'm going to tell you this is what's going to happen. And then finally, what my opinions are on the market. Let's start with the recent history and what generally happens with elections. So here you have basically the recent history of basically what kind of happens in election years. So the red arrows just point out basically from the early 2000s right through to the last election what has happened in the market pretty much after every election. And you'll see here pretty much from the early 2000s there's almost an immediate impact once an election is basically happens. So you see here basically most of the time there's a bit of a pickup in the market after an election. You can see that pretty much consistently except for sort of around 2010 and also that last election in 2022. The reasons being, so I'll tell you right now, is because post 2010 you had sort of a bit of a post GFC cash flow liquidity issue with a lot of places. That's one of the issues, and rates were a bit higher. Obviously in 2022 rates were also high as well. They did pick up pretty much straight after COVID, or should I say, pretty much it's 2021 really, but that's pretty much what happened. So that's really the reasons why. But in pretty much all other elections, you had a bit of a pickup in the property market all the time, or pickup in sentiment. So you see there pretty much in the whole way from the early 2000s, aside from those two. So that is pretty much 4 out of 6 times it picked up. And that was when basically the only times it didn't is basically when rates were too high. So that's the easiest way to describe it. So that's generally what has happened in the past. Typically around this kind of time, what happens is there's a couple of things. So when an election's about to be called, buyers generally freeze in their decision making. That's what happens because people are generally wanting to know who's going to be in power, what their policies are, how's that going to affect me and all that kind of thing. Because I think pretty much everyone's not stupid. People know that politicians make election promises that they know they can't fulfill because they just want to win the election. That's what they do. So people generally be a bit slow in decision making. On top of that, because of that too, you generally have people being indecisive over where they want to rent. And that's again for similar reasons, because they want to know what's going to happen and what they're going to do in the future. And again, as I said, parties promise the world to their constituents. So again, you might have something like, for example, last election, you had, I think, Albo and his party saying they're going to bring down power bills by like $300. Power bills are going up like 60 or 70%. So just don't believe anything they say. Watch what they do, not to what they say. Just if everyone voting, just think of that. Watch what they do, not what they say. So look, let's get into what really truly matters in the property market, even despite when an election is on. So first things first, the underlying characteristics of each market. So for example, what are the demographics? What's the industry of the area? Who buys here? What's the long-term growth? That's your fundamentals behind the markets. Don't get caught up in, this market looks bad this second, because I'm telling you right now, there are times of the market where Bellevue Hill in Sydney has looked awful, but it's still done like 9% for like 100 years. So don't get caught up in that rubbish of people saying from like these bullshit buyers agencies and all that kind of thing, saying, it looks terrible right now, worst place to invest. The people that invested there and held for long term are laughing all the way to the bank. As I said, the point of the cycle. So I previously mentioned the property clock and describing where each city's at. So for those that didn't watch this episode, please go back and watch it. Just search up property clock on my actual page. But this is where each city is at. And you'll see right here, you've got clearly distinctive different parts of the market, right? So 12 to 3, for those that don't know, that's your downturn. 3 to 6 is your stabilization. 6 to 9 is your upturn. And then 9 to 12 is your boom, 11 to 12 is your winner's curse phase of the cycle. So you've clearly got suburbs here that have underperformed in recency, and not suburbs but cities, and then suburbs within cities that are underperformed in recency. So that is all your property, basically cities that are between 3 and 6, and then you got ones that have recently overperformed, which is all your suburbs in your boom phase. And the ones that are overperformed will probably underperform in the next 10 years. The ones that are underperformed will probably overperform in the next 10 years, particularly more towards the 6 mark. So consider that. I'm basically giving you a free shot at how to make money in the market here. So you can't stuff it up, really. Just consider that. Monetary policy. Look, we're clearly on the easing side of the cycle here. No one doubts that. We've already had an interest rate cut. This is just the RBA tracker. You'll see how many rate cuts are priced in. There's at least 3 priced in there. You could argue probably even 4 if you look at it here as well. This moves quite rapidly as well. Like by the time the election actually happens, this might even go down further. But what happens here is with monetary policy easing, people generally spend more money and sentiment goes up. So definitely something to consider with what really happens in the market. Immigration policy. Look, I don't think anyone needs to question this. The numbers do not lie here. The minute we've had people in power post-COVID, whether that's both Labor or Liberal, although Labor is significantly worse, 100%, we've had the floodgates open and we've built, only a couple of hundred homes since they've got in power, since the COVID and the election, but we've had more than 1 million people coming to Australia. And I think a monkey would be able to figure out that that is not what we need. And if you really think about it, this is just true ABS data, Federal Treasury Analytics, and off Matusik, which is a site that I actually do really recommend people look at because their data is very good. But these are the predicted, basically, immigration trends, despite them saying we're going to cut it. So you're still getting 350 to 400,000 people right up to the 2030s here. So that is not going to change. I'm telling you right now, don't listen to the main parties. They're still going to bring in a lot of immigrants. Both have since pretty much the 90s, and even before that, some people argue as well. Building approvals, demand and supply. So you've got your demand here, just right of where it says total dwellings, that pocket in the States. Then you got your supply, your difference, and the percentage difference. And this is basically this is Matusik and ABS data right through to 2030. And you'll see where it's going to continue to be undersupplied in the future. Now, don't go to the Northern Territory. The area doesn't have enough there. But if you look at basically our eastern states, and you could probably count Tassie even in that as well, look at the undersupply, then look at WA and South Australia, the oversupply in the future that's going to be there. And and that's what we want to look at in towards the later parts of the 2020s. That's something definitely to consider there. You're going to have a massive change in what's going to happen here. It's not going to be the same as all things equal in all other areas and what's happened recently. It will change up and it's not going to be exactly the same. So definitely consider that in terms of what really matters. Let's get into the effect of each party. Now, there are going to be people that don't like it, but because I will have true Labor people and I will have true should I say Liberal National Coalition people here. But this is basically consistently what policy is on each of them. So Labor's policy generally has increased taxation, further support for the lower middle class, you have further government spending, very large immigration will continue, very large debt and higher density will be promoted. That's what generally Labor will do, and that's pretty consistent with what they're promising over the future. Now, what's the effect going to be of this going to be? Overall, the price will increase most definitely. I'm telling you right now, the price will increase no matter what. Post an election, the market always goes up no matter who is in power. And you can see that from my previous years that I've described earlier in the episode. So if you need a look, here it is. This is what it looks like. Aside from pretty much your 2010 and the most recent election, it's both because rates were high and you had sort of a pretty restrictive lending part of the cycle. That's the reason it was there. Okay? Another effect is you'll find with Labor, the lower end of the market will perform best, probably sub $1 million, I'd say, but fundamentally the strong suburbs, so the areas that I tell people to invest will still perform very well as they always have accordingly. The very top of the market under Labor will also continue to rise, and I mean particularly the top 1%. So it's your very rich suburbs of all the cities. So it's like your inner eastern suburbs, lower North Shore, Sydney, your very rich inner north and very rich inner east of Brisbane, your very rich inner sort of suburbs of Melbourne, inner east, inner south. Probably your real rich sort of inner west areas and coastal areas of Perth as well will do very well there too. And the reason for that is because overall home ownership will fall significantly, especially for the lower middle class. So what you have here is you have the sub sort of lower end of the market. Everyone piles into that because they support it most. And then what you happens is between the sort of lower end of the market and the top end of the market, no one can afford it because taxation continues to increase. That end of the market no one can afford, but pretty much it's only a very small percentage that can, because they get wiped out with all this spending and basically inflation and also unemployment. That's what happens. And then the top end of the market, because it's not a mortgage market, right? Believe it or not, it's something like 60% of all houses in Sydney purchased over $3 million are bought outright in cash. That's the rough statistics. It's roughly that. If you look on RP data, and if you look at ABS statistics correctly, that's what happens. So you'll find the very top end of the market will continue to go up because of this. These are non-mortgage markets, so that's what's going to happen under Labor. That's the effect of what their policy is going to be. Let's get into the Liberals and Nationals, or should I say the Coalition. Look, their policy generally is that, look, I know they say a lot of the time they're going to decrease taxation, but that doesn't generally happen. Generally, taxation with them stays stagnant. Immigration will still be large numbers. It won't be as large as Labor, but a bit of the difference in their policy will be that Labor will bring in basically anyone, particularly those who are even from, should I say, war-torn countries. The Liberals won't generally do that. They'll bring in a lot of immigrants, but it'll be generally your wealthy students and your wealthy sort of business-style immigrants. The Liberals do generally get sort of small to medium business support offsets. You do get that with the Labor guys too, but they tend to tax it a little bit more than the Liberals do. You will get relative government spending as well. You'll get spending just in different areas. So obviously people will know one of the big projects that they're looking at is the nuclear project. So they have spending, but it's just in different ways. And you generally have lower density. So the Liberals, you'll find generally, what they do is you'll have density, but it won't be the same as Labor. Labor will generally promote massive high density areas in certain parts. Liberals will promote density, will generally be rezoning, should I say, outer areas and rezoning sort of smaller cities and that kind of thing. That's what they'll generally do. So you'll see under the Liberals, you get more new estates and more estates open in greenfield areas as well. That's generally what they kind of do. Look, the effect is going to be quite similar in terms of overall prices. You'll find that prices will increase regardless of whether Liberals or Labor win this election. It will increase regardless of who it is. However, the part of the market will change about where it goes up. So you'll find out of the Liberals and Nationals, but with their policy, it'll be the major capitals and the regional towns that will perform best. And it'll be particularly the fundamental suburbs, again, that will perform best in this. It's simply because these areas really historically do perform very well, but the money generally here with the small businesses generally go to the fundamentally strong areas, so be inner suburbs of these areas, of both your major regional centres and your capitals that will do best. Look, I am definitely more of a conservative voter. I'm probably not going to first preference the Liberals or Nationals this time around. I have in the past, but probably not this election. But I don't want to make this political, but overall, I'm telling you, home ownership levels in this instance will improve. The many capitals with the Liberals and Nationals will become completely unreachable. And the reason for that is because the money will flow into these major capitals and regional centres, should I say. And that will push the prices up even more. And already these areas are unaffordable. It will become even worse under these areas. However, the lower end of the market, especially your country towns and especially, should I say, your cheaper outer city areas will probably stay a little bit more stagnant and still be affordable for more of that middle class. So that's why home ownership levels will improve. Now, don't hate me if you're more of a sort of left voter of the line, but this is what will happen. It generally happens in the election, and their policies are pretty consistent with that as well. So you just have to look at the policy and to know what's going to happen, and what truly will happen under each party. So just consider that, both everyone, when you're considering this election. Look, I want to just make it clear with what my general opinions are. First things first, look, invest in suburbs with strong fundamentals. Invest in suburbs that have performed well over the long term, and especially have strong demographics and low supply. To do that, you can follow the demographic trends. Very easy. Demographics drive markets. Do not forget that. Look, also with that, the value is in the land. Don't forget, and when I say in the land, I don't mean it's something as simple as the land size, because you can say the land size of 20 hectares in Broken Hill has a lot of value. And I'm telling you right now, 20 metres squared in Surrey Hills is worth more than 20 hectares in Broken Hill. I'm telling you that right now. Do not buy out there. It's not the size of the land, it's the value of the land that matters the most, okay? So don't get caught up in size of the land, it's the value that matters most. Another one, do the opposite of what the media say. If the media says the market's going for a slowdown, buy there. Do not listen to the media. They're full of broke art students who are on $79,000 a year. Why would you listen to someone who's on $79,000 a year telling you to buy the biggest financial decision in your life? Just ignore exactly what they have to say. Do not listen to the media. Do the opposite of what they say. Do not listen to them. And that comes to my final part. Be greedy when others are fearful. That's a Warren Buffett quote, and that's my favorite one pretty much of time. Be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy, right? That's exactly what you need to do. So a market that everyone's hot over, do not buy in, because it's probably already overperformed. Look at my property clock that I've previously brought up if you want to know this. But what you want to do is buy in an area or suburb that's underperformed, because it'll probably overperform in the future. So that's what my opinions really are. Look, don't get caught up in too much of the election with what's going on. Generally, it's actually a great time to buy because there's not much activity. So just consider that, everyone. And look, really, I thank everyone for watching. Look, for those really serious, reach out to me via www.compoundinvest.com.au. I'm telling you right now, I would care more than any other buyer's agent in the country would about your situation. And if you're really serious about getting in the market, either sign up via Compound Invest or get into Premier Properties. You do have to sign up as well via contract, but you'll get access to the best properties available in the country. So thanks again, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.